You know, my teaching tonight sounds like it's one that's been around for a long time. Does God answer prayers? Well, yes, he does. And he does so in such a manner that we can't understand sometimes. I know we've talked about this before, but I still get questions about it. So I'm not going to bother you with the same old answers. The obvious answer is yes. So why doesn't he answer mine? Maybe it is the way you're asking him. Or maybe it is what you are asking for. Have you ever thought that it might just be timing? We live in a 24-hour world. And in that 24 hours, we sleep approximately 8 hours of it. That's 1/3 of every day. Some of us try to sleep a little more than that now and then, but at least 1/3 of the day we sleep. So that means we need an answer right now, doesn't it? While we're awake. It won't do us any good to get an answer to our prayers when we're asleep and don't hear it. We need to have the visual. We need to see it happening. We're this kind of people. Well, God lives in a different time frame. A 24-hour day to him is equal to 1,000 years of hours. Whoa. So what seems like an eternity to us is just but a few seconds to God. Besides that, God may want to arrange things just a little differently. So now, what he seems that he is not answering your prayers, he's just setting everything up. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm just putting you off, or what I'm going to say is God will answer in his time, not ours, blah, blah, blah. Remember Joseph? He was thrown into a pit, sold to slavery, years before he was made second command of Egypt. But he was made second command of Egypt to help people, to help his brothers and his father. Now, his brothers had thrown him in the pit, told his father that he had been killed, and so they never expected to see him again. Well, famine hit the country, and they were starving. They ran to Egypt because Egypt had grain. And they presented themselves to him, to Joseph. And everybody knows the story. So let me show you a few other times that God seemed to take his time in answering prayers. Phil Callaway didn't know what to say when his children asked if their mother was going to die. You see, she was having severe seizures, and in the longer they went on, the worse they got. All of their friends prayed, and the whole congregation prayed, but nothing ever got better. No, they got worse. They were becoming hourly and extremely severe. Phil looked up to God and asked, God, please do something, anything. And a doctor's name came to Phil. So he looked it up and called him, made an appointment. The doctor found that her chemical deficiency was way off and started treatment right away. Soon his wife was normal again, and you see, everyone was praying for a healing, and they were sincere. But when Phil prayed that day, he said anything. He had asked God for anything. So God gave Phil the name of a doctor. Now it was up to Phil to do something with it. In the NFL, a running back named Sherman Smith, called Sherman the Tank, because he was all muscle, and at 225 pounds, he was not someone you wanted tackling you. He was at the top of his game. Then one day, out of the blue, the Seattle Seahawks traded him for no apparent reason. And they traded him to San Diego. Sherman had only been with the Chargers just a few weeks when he hurt his knee. And while he was healing, he asked God, why he was traded. During this time, now God didn't answer him right away, but during this time, Sherman was able to lead another player to the Lord. This player was a party guy. I mean, from the word go. His name was Miles McPherson. And he became later a youth evangelist and led tens of thousands of young people to the Lord. You see, God had a purpose for Sherman the Tank, and it wasn't football. It was doing God's work. Now, we here at Arrowhead Messianic Congregation have seen many of our own people healed, and yes, many of us have had to see doctors and even had surgery to repair or replace our broken parts. I know that God was with me through everything I've been through, from my broken parts to the broken ceiling in my house. All of you know how I am about faith and how I put faith above everything, no matter what it is. Because without faith, what do we have? Nothing. I tell you right now, no matter what the problem is, no matter what the problem that is surrounding you, give it to God and release it. Don't call it back. And when you let go, let God take care of it. But if you keep calling it back and saying, God's not answering my prayer, then ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? If you don't let go of the things that you are praying about, God can't do anything because you won't let him. You're still holding on to him. I know this. I know this part. That God wants all of us to be happy and satisfied. Yes, we can cry over loved ones, and it breaks our hearts when they are suffering. But ask God for strength. I've seen my own children suffer from things, and I have prayed over them, and so have many of you. Sometimes it takes a while for them to find their answers. I walked away and was lost for years. About 12 years ago, you would not have even known me. I was not the man you see here today. I have not been the same man for the past 10 years. My life changed one night, and most of you know the story. From the darkest place I've ever been to the brightest place I've ever been, and it only gets brighter every day. If I could, I would spend 7 days a week right here in God's house doing his work. My wife would even testify to that. But don't get me wrong. I've had a good life. I've had a troubled life. I've walked in the dark until I got lost. But after all that darkness, I've been walking in his light. And it just keeps getting brighter each day. My first day, I was a 1-watt bulb. A match was brighter than I was. The more I learned to trust in God and let him have the things that are bothering me, the brighter I got. And I am still working on it. My faith has grown 1,000-fold, and every day it just seems to get brighter and brighter. I wish that I could take all of your problems and all your troubles from you, but I can't. You see, I'm only a man. But God can. And he is just waiting for you to turn them over to him. And when you learn how to just let go and give whatever it is to God, and not think about it, or especially worry about it anymore, your life will change. And you will see things in a whole different light. You see, when we have a problem, no matter what kind of problem it is, very stressful, and we worry about it constantly. Worry is from Satan. Worry is from the enemy. Stress is from the enemy. It's not from God. So when we have this problem, we have to give it to God. We have to let go. And let go means not remembering it every 15 minutes. Not calling it back and saying, God, why can't you do something? Well, you haven't let go yet. You're still holding on to it. It's the hardest thing in the world you'll ever do. And I'm serious about that. If you've ever thought about just letting go of a problem, turning your back and walking away and not thinking about that problem anymore, and thanking God for answering it and for taking care of it when you haven't seen any answer yet. But if you learn to do that, your life will change. Your countenance will change. You will become happier. You won't worry about things. The news, I don't even listen to the news anymore. I don't want to hear it. It's the same thing day in and day out. This guy hates that guy hates this guy. The same thing. Sometimes they just change the names. But all in all, it never changes, does it? Half our country hates the other half. But that's okay. We don't care. What can they do to me? They can take my life. But they can't take my soul. Because that's given to God. I do not fear them. And Jesus said this. Yeshua said it. It says, don't fear the one that can take your life. Fear the one that can take your soul. Because if you lose that, you know what happens. So he's the one I fear. And when we say fear the Lord, we don't mean be afraid of him. We mean to honor him, to obey him, to worship him. This is what we actually mean when we say fear the Lord. When you have a stubborn thing that you need help on, and you have prayed over it, and yet it seems to never go away, then it's time to get serious. Because this is worth saving. Pray harder. How can I pray harder? Pray with your elders. Or call the prayer line, get on a group prayer. When the enemy is fighting you, then it's worth saving. Because he wouldn't bother you if it wasn't worth it. If you weren't causing him some kind of agony, he would not bother you. To you then, it would be like living the kingdom. Because Satan wouldn't be bothering you. But when you start having these problems and Satan starts bothering you and you start praying about it and things don't change, think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. Because a lot of our times we have so self-absorbed, so self-involved. I have to fix this. I can't fix it. My son was sick. I couldn't fix it. I didn't know how. I wasn't a doctor. So I asked the doctor, I said, where's the best doctor for him? And they said, Phoenix, Arizona. Now, for some of you, that isn't too shabby. But at that time, we were in Anchorage, Alaska. We had a home. We had everything. And we had to sell everything we had and get on a boat, 2 vehicles, and come down. Now my son is 41 or 2, I forget. He's getting so old, can't remember. He's got a son, 21 years old. Was it worth the move? Heck yes, absolutely. Do I regret it? No, never. Because I couldn't fix it. I didn't have that strength, but somebody else did. And I had to go to where that person was. That's what I mean sometimes. You have to let go of the things you're holding on to. The job in Anchorage, the work, the lifestyle that we had. I had to let go. And go to a brand new land. Place I'd never been. Brand new place. Take my son. And one of my daughters. And start a life over again. I did that because that's where that doctor said the best was. And as far as I'm concerned, he was right. You know, when the enemy's fighting you, then it is worth saving. And the victory will be sweeter and way more satisfying. You know, but listen, maybe the prayers you have been saying were just light and not in deep water. Not deep water prayers. What do I mean by deep water prayers? Let me explain it like this. I'm a fisherman. When I go fishing, I see a lot of people at the lake casting out 10, 15, 20, 25 feet with a little bobber on the end and bait about 2 feet down. And they're waiting for a fish to come along. They're fishing. But you see, I want to catch a big fish. I don't want to catch a little fish. Because if I'm going to spend my time out in the hot sun doing this, I want the satisfaction. I don't keep the fish. I let the fish go. I just want to catch a bigger fish. So the only place I'm going to find the bigger fish are in the deeper waters. That's where you'll find your answers to prayers, is in deeper water. You have to get a little bit deeper. See, but that big fish down there, he knows that however much energy he has to expend to get that bait that you're offering him, that bait has to replace that energy plus give him more energy so he can grow. So he looks at your little bait and says, it's not worth it. I'm not going up there to bite that. Well, God doesn't say your prayers aren't worth it, but Satan does. So as long as he can interfere with you and drive you on, you worry and things like this, God can't answer your prayer. So then you get that idea that, you're not offering enough or something, that God's not going to answer your prayer. He doesn't answer my prayers. I don't know why he doesn't answer my prayers. Well, change the way you fish. Change the way you pray. Even the people that cast out there 10 or 15 feet, they do catch some fish. But now big fish, they didn't get that way. I want God to answer my prayers. So I have to change the way I pray. I have to present to him something that he wants. What is it he wants more than anything else in this world? You. Me. This is what he wants. The prayer doesn't really mean anything. It means a lot to us. But him answering this prayer or that prayer, he's answering it because of you. And you and you and you. That's why he's answering the prayer. Not because of what the prayer is. So you want a big trophy to brag about? Give it to him. Many well-known preachers make claims about what they have achieved. And a lot of them have large churches to gather more people and to get more money. But soon enough, they fail and just disappear. We've seen this right here in the United States. Many of you probably remember the Crystal Cathedral. It's gone. No longer exists. No longer is it on air. No longer are all those millionaires sitting there. What happened? Well, God wasn't there either. And he wasn't there for a reason. And so they fail and just disappear. The ones that give God the glory go on quietly doing God's work with little or no acknowledgments by the world. Because their biggest reward is in heaven. Our little congregation right here, we have more healings than the larger churches in Phoenix. And yet no one knows about them except us. I have prayed for people here, and they have come back and told me that they got healing, and they thanked me. And my first response is, it's him, not me. I'm just the conduit. He's the one. When we prayed to him, he answered your prayer. Wasn't me. And then they look at me and smile and say, thank you anyway. And then I smile. Because sometimes I pray for someone's trip. So one of our congregants is going on a trip. So I ask them, God, to take care of them while they're on the trip, to bless them, keep them safe, and return them to us. And when they come back, I welcome them back with a smile and a handshake or a hug, and a smile on their face is my reward. Have you ever prayed that God would use you, then nothing ever seems to happen? God may have things for you to do first. Remember the story about Sherman the tank? How he was transferred and didn't know why? Then God used him to bring a wild party child to the Lord and then turned him into an evangelist to bring thousands to the Lord. I guarantee you, if you ask for God to use you, he will. Now, it may take a couple of years just to get you ready to do the job that he wants you to do. Just after I was saved, I asked God. I prayed to him every night. And I would look up and I would say, Hineni, Hineni, every night. Here am I, God, here am I. Use me, because I saw your light. Well, God knew something. He knew that I needed a little more guidance and a little more teaching first. And then he led me to several other churches right here in the valley. Then one day, he led me here to Arrowhead. And the rest is history. I love my Yeshua. I love him so much. And I'll do whatever he asks, when he asks. And I do not fear, because I know that he is with me. I want you to remember this. God knew you before you were born. What does that mean? That means he knew you before you were ever in your mother's womb. He says so. That means you were where he was at one time. And now you're here. So you say, okay, God, I want to work for you. To be called of God or by God, what does that mean? A calling or vocation actually is the same thing. God calls us, calls all of us to do something for him. Starting with the prophets, they were to tell the world what was going to happen and how men were going to be. God called John the Baptist while he was still in his mother's womb. John the Baptist knew Yeshua when they both were in their mother's womb. He could feel the spirit of Yeshua, even though neither of them had been born yet. The central focus of our calling is to be on God and what he wants. All the rest of life will include this knowledge. Now we must follow the feelings that drive us, because this is the way God leads us. I sometimes hear God speaking to me, and it's not an audible voice like you and I hear, like our voices, but a very distinct thought that won't go away. And we must act on it. Maybe nothing happens right away, but remember, if he told us to do it and we do it, we're planting a seed. God told you to do it, and it will manifest itself in the right time. Rabbi Allen and Pastor Anita were already married, and Rabbi was working, raising a family, when he found God. Rabbi will even tell you that they had a rock band. They were not church people. They were worldly people at that time. But then when they found God, his world changed. Rabbi continued to work at his job and support his family and work towards a retirement. God led him on many different paths. And then one day, he got the burning that he and Pastor Anita were to start this congregation. Now, we're not a mega congregation of thousands of people, nor are we hundreds of people. But God never stopped using Rabbi. God has sent him on missions to Africa, India, Nepal, and his children have gone to China as missionaries. Rabbi writes books and travels to faraway lands and leaves this congregation in his pastors' and elders' hands without fear of losing them. He doesn't have the fear that we're going to steal his congregation away from him because he knows each one of us in our hearts, what makes us tick. Remember what I said, I found God again? You see, God never left me. It was me that walked away. And when I found him again, I'll never let go. I absolutely won't. There's just no way. God means so much to me because of what he's done. What he's done to me, my family, the people I know, where I'm at in this congregation. None of that would have been possible if that one night I hadn't fallen down on my knees and said, God, I know you're real. I need your help. He didn't look at me and say, well, you know, I knew you once before and you walked away, so I'm not going to mess with you anymore. No, God reached down, picked me up, changed my life. So no, today I don't watch the news. I don't really care. All I care about is, God, what do you want me to do for you? What door do you want me to go through? Well, he led me from being here as an attendee in the congregation to working on Thursday night prayer. Heading up the Thursday night prayer, I became a shamish. And then later I became an elder. And then later I became a chaplain. As I grew, God opened doors and moved me in them, in these different places. Now, I know others that are doing the same thing. As they're growing in the Lord, they're asking the Lord, Lord, what can I do? What can I do for you? And the Lord's guiding them to become shamish, to become elders, and to become leaders. Because you see, as we get older and become leaders, we also need somebody to fill our place. Because we're getting to that place where you might want to rest just a little bit. I love the Lord, but I don't know how long I have. I'm already almost 77. So as I feel like I'm only 27, you know, till it gets cold and rainy, and then I don't feel like I'm 27 anymore. God doesn't care. That's the point. He doesn't care. God loves me and I love him. And so, as though I'm 27 in my mind, I'm 77 in my body and it's falling apart. So I need somebody to come along behind me. And then that person will need somebody behind them. And it ever grows. And it can only grow if we put God first and we trust him. Does God answer prayers? Yes, he does. Does he answer them when we want them answered? No, not always. Does he answer them the way we'd like him to answer them? No. When you ask God for a car, don't tell him you need a Jaguar. Just say, Lord, I just need a car. I laugh about that particular name because my wife notified me the other day, says, there's a 92 Jaguar available for sale for only $2,500. And I went, oh, I love Jaguar. Oh, but it's a 92 and they cost a lot to repair, so maybe I shouldn't do that. If I was 50 years younger, maybe I would have gone, yeah, I got to get that car. Because you see, a long time ago, when I was younger, before my wife and I got married, I had a nice sports car. It was very, very fast. It was a Shelby Cobra with a 427 in it. And it would get up and go. But those days are gone. I had to get rid of that car before I got married, and it was a good thing, even though I didn't want to at the time. I didn't know my wife. I wasn't planning on getting married, but I had to get rid of the car. Because shortly thereafter, I did get married, and we went to Germany, so I wouldn't have been able to take it with me anyway. So that car would have stayed parked for a couple of years. Well, by that time, we had children. One here and one on the way. And then shortly there, a Shelby, you can't carry more than 2 people in it. So I don't know where kids were going to ride. So I would have had to get rid of it anyway. But God knew all that. And we went to Germany. Our daughter was born, and we came home. And I went to another place. My wife stayed alone. And then I ended up in the hospital because I wasn't really following God a lot, so I was stubbing my toe, and it wasn't good. But all in all, God will answer your prayers. We just ask him in a different way, or we get help. If he doesn't answer your prayer right away, talk to him. Get serious about it. Because if it's worth him answering, then it is serious business. I don't care what it is. Because it's serious enough that if you won't let go and let him answer it, that the devil keeps talking to you and making you worry, then it's serious business. And you have to let go. When you let go, you don't worry about it. You don't stress over it. It's gone. It's not in front of you anymore. It's in God's hands. He says, well, don't you worry? No. I cannot worry because worry is from him. Stress is from the bad guy, not the good guy. It took me a long time to get that in my head, to understand it, what it meant, to let go. But once you do, once you learn, oh man, life is a lot beautiful. Well,